All right, we are live. I'll start recording. All right, welcome everyone to Armed with Faith, which is a program talking about better ways to serve our youth in the church. As always, we have our host, Father Gary Kyriacou. I'll just get started with a few announcements. Please be respectful and polite with the opinions of others if you're here joining us in conversation, or if you're on our Facebook or YouTube comments. We are streaming live tonight on both YouTube and Facebook for the first time. Feel free on both of those platforms to share your comments and questions. We want this to be an interactive program. And as well, of course, if you're joining us on Zoom, feel free to post your comments and questions or send them to me directly. You can also use the raise hand feature during our Q&A, and we look forward to those conversations. The Orthodox Christian Network is a 501c3 corporation and a 100% donor-supported ministry. So we thank all of you who support us financially, who support us by engaging with our programs. And we always love hearing from you. You can always email us at info@myocn.net if you have ideas, feedback, comments. Please always feel free to reach out. This program is being broadcast live, as I mentioned, and it's also being recorded. So it will be available on our website, myocn.net, after the program. And lastly, I invite anyone who's watching us live who hasn't already to join MyOCN community on our website. It's a free membership, and you'll be the first to be updated about all of our upcoming programs, new opportunities to engage, and everything like that. So without further ado, I will turn things over to Father Gary for the program.
Thank you, Noel. I really appreciate it. We'll start with a prayer. Let us pray to the Lord. Lord, have mercy. O Lord our God, we thank you for the opportunity to gather. We ask that you bless the conversation and bless the work that Panoss does for his metropolis and for the youth of our archdiocese. Guide him in every good work. We also ask you, Lord, to bless MyOCN and bless all those who listen and the work that they do to glorify your name. For you are holy now and forever into the ages of ages. Amen.
Amen.
Panoss Coufos, I'm going to just ask you real quick because my buddy might be listening, and I know I've asked you this question before, but no relation to Jim Coufos, a writer out here in Los Angeles, right?
No relation.
No relation. All right. So leave that there. And I'm actually not in Los Angeles today. I'm in wet Seattle. So enjoying it up here. But Panoss, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who are you? Where are you? And what do you do?
Love it. Father Gary, so excited to be on with you tonight. I love the program, I love the show, and I love the Orthodox Christian Network. As you mentioned, my name is Panoss Coufos. I'm the Director of Youth and Young Adult Ministries for the Metropolis of Boston, together with the Metropolis of Boston Camp. I've been serving in this role since September of 2020. I graduated our seminary, Holy Cross Greek Orthodox School of Theology, in May of 2020. Prior to enrolling in seminary, I attended Northeastern University, where I graduated with a degree in industrial engineering. While I was there, I got to work for Parker Aerospace, GE, Raytheon, and it was really nice to get a different experience than the one that seminary provided. I am a native of Southern New Hampshire, where I currently reside, and I am really blessed to be able to have an office in Brookline at our Metropolis headquarters, and another office up at our camp in Kentucky, New Hampshire, just outside of Concord. It's been really great. A little bit over a year that I've been in this role full time. But for the last several years, I've been helping both with our camp and with some of the youth and young adult ministries as I was a student.
Awesome, Panoss. That's very cool. So Panoss, you graduated from Northeastern, and then from Northeastern went directly into Holy Cross?
That's right.
And what was that transition like? What were you wanting to do with your life, and then how the turn?
Yeah, it was really interesting. I always loved math and science in middle school and high school, and I took some pre-engineering courses when I was in high school, and I loved engineering. If you remember the show How It's Made, that would go and talk about the way different products are manufactured, I was a nerd, and that was totally my favorite show. And I wanted to get my hands dirty with some of that stuff. So I went and I studied engineering. Loved industrial engineering because I got to work in manufacturing settings. So going on to manufacturing floors and actually working with product and seeing the way things were designed and how we could improve the process by which they were manufactured. I loved all of that. But as I was studying, as I was involved with the extracurriculars at Northeastern, I started getting involved with the OCF, with our Orthodoxy on Tap ministry, and with our camp. And the more that I did that, the more I found that it was so fulfilling that I would rush through all my other activities, all my other obligations, so that I could help with different ministries. There came a point as I was finishing college where I had a conversation, multiple conversations with a few priests that I really trust. And I said, you know what, I think I want to do ministry full time. And so with some great guidance and after a lot of great conversation with these clergymen, with my parents and some other full-time youth ministers, I made a decision with the blessing of Zemun's Metropolitan Methodios of Boston to enroll in seminary, with the idea that I wanted to spend a lot of my time focused on youth and young adult ministry. So when I graduated, I found that I was graduating early from seminary, wasn't sure what was going to happen. I took almost a 3-month hiatus in Greece, did a little spiritual pilgrimage the summer of 2020, and upon returning, came to say hello to His Eminence, and His Eminence said, "Pano, I hope you're ready to work because we have a job for you." So it was really great how things sort of fell into place.
So you finished in the spring of 2020 and then ended up in Greece for 3 months before starting in September of 2020.
Yep, exactly.
Real quick, how was being at the seminary during COVID, that semester there when COVID hit in March of 2020? How was that, and what was that like? Just, I know it's not really the topic of the show, but I think some people might be interested to know how your studies went during that time.
It was interesting for sure. I mean, it was an unprecedented time for everybody, and especially the seminary. I right when the coronavirus broke out, I was actually on personal travel over spring break to Germany, and I got word that there was a travel ban that would be enacted, and so I cut my trip short and came back home. And upon coming home, I was told that I would have to quarantine for 2 weeks from the school. But then they sent out a follow-up email to everybody saying that we're going to do the next few weeks virtually anyways. And watching the way the seminary shifted so quickly to online learning was really impressive. I mean, without skipping a beat, all the classes were offered virtually, and most of the classes were lecture-based, so it was fine. But what was most interesting was our teleturgics class, where we learned how to serve the services. Our professor, Father Philip Zamaris, would make videos of himself serving in his parish in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and send them to us. But then when we were actually required to do different parts, everybody would take videos around their kitchen table or another table in their home as if it were an altar table. So it was rather funny.
That's interesting. I remember the teleturgics classes, practicing those sacraments as a layperson, and how odd it felt to do that, but how important they are as well. So Panos, I know the feeling of wanting to do one thing with your life and being a geek and a nerd. I was in film school when I decided to leave and go to the seminary and take a turn. What was it about the ministry? What was it about the church life? What was it that made you want to basically, get off one highway and enter a totally different kind of a road for your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember my friends and I in college, we would often have a lot of great conversation. We'd finish our schoolwork, we'd finish the rest of the things we're involved in, and then we'd sit around and we'd hang out and we'd watch TV. We'd go to different places around Boston and hang out, and we'd have these conversations of like, okay, what else is there? There has to be something more than just going to work and coming home. And I found that our beautiful faith really answered that question as to what else is there and what is the sort of bigger picture of life. And the more I was able to tap into that and understand it for myself, the more I was hooked on the gospel and on that message of us being part of Christ's body. And the more that I found solace and peace and refuge in that, the more I wanted to study it and to help others find it, because I noticed it was a common trend, not just amongst the peers in my class, but of the kids that I grew up with at Goya and at Sunday school and at camp. We all had this sort of same realization that there has to be more than just work and home and family. There has to be something bigger that we tie into. And so once I sort of started understanding that for myself was when I really said, all right, I got to really take this seriously. And the more I started to take it seriously, the more I wanted to share it. And I think that's what really led me to the seminary.
Panos, I'm seeing a lot of similarities in what you're saying and what I experienced as well, which is really kind of cool because you know that we're not born priests, and we struggle with that desire to leave and to go to seminary and to change our life path a little bit. And I too fell in love with the gospel message and the story and exactly what you're saying with peace and all that. Let me ask you now, Goya, Sunday school, summer camp. How were those influenced in your life? How much of your childhood was based on that? How much of it came later in life as a college student? How much was it your parents, laying your clothes out on your bed for you on Saturday night, telling you that, we're going to church on Sunday morning? That was my experience. Point being that, I really, when I was a kid, didn't have a choice. Sunday was what our family did. And it was a great habit to get into, to get to liturgy, right? So there was a foundation there for me with life in the church. But as I grew, it was something that I took on my own. And as a youth minister now, I really enjoy watching young people take on that responsibility and take ownership of their faith themselves. What was your youth like in your development, in your faith development, Sunday school, Goya, and camp, like you mentioned?
Yeah, so from a young age, my parents really set a beautiful foundation for me spiritually. We were in church often. My parents served on parish council, on Philoptochos boards. My dad ran the festival at our church for a number of years. So they were immersed in the rhythm of the church's calendar. And so when the time came for me to be of age to start serving in the altar, it was sort of a no-brainer. Okay, Pano's going to go serve in the altar. And I did that and I loved it. I was part of the different programs, Joy, Goya, and really found a great community. What was really great was all my cousins were attending the Metropolis of Boston camp. And so when I turned 8 years old, when they first started accepting campers, I said, well, I'm going to go because all my cousins go. And so there, I really bonded with the kids from my home parish. And we formed this great, really tight-knit community where we would hang out on the weekends and go to church together. And we had a lot of great inside jokes and would do a lot of things. And it was amazing. I think that those programs, Goya, the camp, really planted the seeds of faith that we talk about often in my heart, that were then watered a little bit later on and really took root and grew later on. I'll share that a little bit later. But they were so instrumental. Together with having gone to our parochial school here in Lowell, Massachusetts, the Hellenic American Academy. I remember we'd have theology class on Thursdays, and the priest from Holy Trinity would come in and speak with us, and we would go there for feast days and things like that. And just being able to serve in the altar and seeing that the beauty of that community, which is the first organized Greek Orthodox community in the States, was really beautiful, really, really beautiful. So that was important. But then another really key factor in all of this was as I started getting older, more into the high school years, things get busy, right? There are sports, there are different obligations, things like this happen. And so what I found was that I started bringing my parents to church a little bit more. And I know they're listening and they might be embarrassed for me saying that, but I don't think they would disagree. And a lot of that's because the chanter at my church, Dr. Aristotle Telipapanicolaou, who's a professor at Fordham University, invited me to come start taking some chanting lessons. And so we would go an hour before Orthros on Sundays, and we'd learn from him. And so then just tapping into the liturgical life of the church a little bit more fully really brightened up that spiritual attentiveness.
I hear you. It's awesome. I love that you said that you took your parents to church, because that's the goal of youth ministry, right? To get the kids so excited about church that they're the ones getting the parents to get up earlier and get to church, which is great. You mentioned two things that really kind of sparked something for me there, and that's Dr. Telly Papanicolaou, who was my professor of ethics at seminary. And I just saw him a couple of weeks ago when we were together in New York City for the Archon weekend. He still on me for a paper that I still owe him, but I'll get around to that paper at some point. But let me ask you, 8 years old at a summer camp, were you ever part of the old campus for when it was called Boston Diocese Camp, or did you always go to the Metropolis of Boston Camp, MBC?
So as long as I've been going to camp, it was the Metropolis of Boston Camp, MBC. I believe the
Okay.
switch to diocese happened after that. So, or before.
I only say that to date you with your age a little bit because Perry Skaggs, who was our guest last week and the week before, is the camp director of St. Sophia Camp. And Perry goes way back in the camping days of St. Sophia Camp, where then a very young Ted Barbas, now Father Ted Barbas, Chancellor of your metropolis, came as a young seminarian and served at St. Sophia Camp and was inspired and took St. Sophia Camp. We call it St. Sophia Camp East out there for the metropolis of Boston camp. Panos, I'm really thrilled that you were an 8-year-old camper and you rose through the ranks and now you're the director of the camp, right? So let me ask you, how did the camp have a formation on your faith and your development and your desire to want to serve the church?
When you look at the camping ministry, the week-long experience that camp is, when you look at it as how many hours you spend, it's really one of the most intensive faith-forming ministries that we do as the church. We spend more hours at camp than anywhere else, whether that's Sunday school, OCF, et cetera, except at home. And so then to be there at camp for a week long, to be immersed in the faith, to be immersed in learning about the faith, not just through the catechetical Orthodox life session, but by the way the counselors and older staff members live the faith, is so powerful because it becomes not just this ideological, like pie in the sky, yeah, great, let's love Jesus, but you actually can see people live it. And when young people see other young people and people slightly older than them taking the gospel message seriously, it had a profound effect on me. And I believe that's why we find camp so effective, is because we find that message to be true for 8-year-old campers nowadays as well.
Panos, I'm thrilled to hear you say that. Give me the chills. I've got goosebumps in my hands hearing you say that, because that's the whole point of these ministries and putting them together and to give people the opportunity. I tell parents very often that one week at summer camp can almost be like a whole year of religious education if it's done right. And I know that you guys are doing things right at MBC. The program's been growing and doing some great things. And to watch it grow from the inside out, bringing an 8-year-old camper in and then 20 years later, I don't know, maybe 15 years later, who knows? I don't know your age exactly, but you're the director now, which is really cool. I love it. So, Panos, what is a day like for you as the youth director of the metropolis Boston, metropolis of Boston? What's a day like for you? It's a 9-to-5 job, right? You get up at 9 in the morning. You get up in the morning. You have a cup of coffee. 9 o'clock, you punch in. 5 o'clock, you punch out, right? And right now it's 7:20 out on the East Coast. So I don't know, are you getting overtime pay for this right now, Panos? Can you explain that to us a little bit?
Absolutely. Ministry is most certainly not 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, but that's one of the most exciting things about it. My day is different every single day. So when you take youth and young adult ministries, you're talking age 0 to 30, 35. That's a huge age range. And so I, as one person, can't really do all that much on my own. I think that's something that everybody can agree on. And so the way I am trying to, at the very least, structure the part of the ministry that's been entrusted to me is working with people on the local level and finding ways to really equip them with the tools that they need to succeed. Metropolitan Methodius often says that the strength of the metropolis lies in the strength of the parishes. And so what I view as my role is meeting with youth workers on the parish level, finding out what their needs are and figuring out how we can, like I said, equip them with the tools, training, and resources they need to succeed. So I often will go to different parishes and help them run an event or a series of events where we gather a team of people around to say, great, now that we've seen how it works, you do it. And it's sort of a coaching sort of role. That includes young adult ministry. That could include a regular day could include staff training, preparing for an upcoming week of upcoming camp program, an upcoming youth program, upcoming young adult program. So it really is different all the time. I don't have set hours. And one of the really nice things is I get to travel to the different parts of the metropolis to meet people in their homes, in their parishes. And then on Sundays, more often than not, I get to travel with His Eminence, which is great because together we get to go to different parishes and speak with the priests and youth workers about the work that's being done in their communities. So that's really great. So no, it is not 9 to 5. and that's a great thing. And it's been really enjoyable the last year plus that I've been able to do so.
Panos, I'm just to make sure that we cross this question off the list, so that people that are listening might be wondering: is there a Mrs. Panos Coufos?
There is not.
There's not. Okay, so we're looking for a Mrs. Panos Coufos. I don't mean to embarrass you, but you said your parents are listening, so we'll embarrass. That's for your parents there. But in any case, Panos is a lot taller than you might expect. When I first met Panos, I was looking way up, and I love that, Panos. You have this way about you, carrying yourself, and it's you've got this youthful attitude, but a seriousness about the faith. And I want to know, has that always been your personality? Have you always been kind of youthful? You and I were walking the streets of New York on the way to luncheon a couple weeks ago at the Archon thing. We were joking around. It's always fun to connect ourselves with people that we know, and the stories that we're able to share with, this guy, that guy. And I got this sense that you have a good sense of humor, that you enjoy it. But then when it comes to your vocation, what you're doing, you're really serious about it. Like you're really passionate about what you do. Can you tell me am I right on that? And is that, how you exercise your faith, your life?
Yeah, I think it's all a matter of really turning on the seriousness when it's appropriate, but then really being able to let your guard down at different times too. I mean, when we talk about the faith, we're talking about life, we're talking about salvation, we're talking about the most important truth that life has to offer. And so there is a serious that's needed with that. We have to be serious about that. We can't make a joke out of it. And at the same time, what does Christ say? He says, be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. And so finding this balance between seriousness, but not a dismal attitude, I think is really important, because it's a joyous thing. Our faith is, joy has come to all the world, we say in one of the prayers of Orthros. It's important to have that excited demeanor about this, because if we believe what we preach, why shouldn't we be excited?
I love that, Panos. Panos, tell me, when you graduated from Holy Cross, were you hoping to get the position that you're in, or were you just ready to do work at any parish level? What were you hoping was going to happen after you graduated seminary?
I was really open to anything. I wanted to stay in the metropolis of Boston in some capacity. I wasn't sure what that would be like. When I've just graduated, things weren't, there wasn't necessarily the same position with all the responsibilities open. But I was patiently waiting for something to happen within the metropolis of Boston, not necessarily something at the metropolis. This is a place that gave me life. It's a place where I met Christ in the church, and I have a tremendous respect for His Eminence, who's really guided me through the oversight of the programs throughout my youth, but especially while at seminary. And I wanted to serve under his homophorion. And if he had said, Pano, we don't have anything for you right now, I would have gone gladly somewhere else, to a parish in another metropolis, if he didn't have something. I was very excited that he did, and really happy that I was able to stay.
I'm sure that he's thrilled to have you as well, and I'm sure that he did everything he could to make sure that you didn't flee the metropolis there. Having one of your own in your metropolis, doing what you're doing is really an inspiring and edifying thing for somebody in ministry like His Eminence, Metropolitan Methodius, who's there to watch a young man grow up in his metropolis and then take on a leadership role like you've got, is fantastic. Panos, what do you do to keep abreast of what young people are into these days, right? Like, as soon as I finally got a hang of TikTok, the fad was basically gone, right? So how do you keep, trying to stay there cutting edge with the kids, with what they're doing and the lingo and the things that they're talking about?
I think part of it is just being present. We have a tendency, I think, a lot of times as youth workers to want to organize and to sort of set the stage and set the table for a program, and to say, all right, here it is, and then offer it to the kids and sort of let them all do their thing. It's one thing to do that, but it's another thing to actually get right in it with the kids. And so one of the things that we preach at our camp to our staff is that if the kids are doing arts and crafts, you're doing arts and crafts. And so as much as I can step away from the administrative responsibilities, I try to actually do the activities with the kids. I try to do the icebreakers with them. I try to walk with them on the way from the chapel up to our cafeteria after our morning services and our evening services at camp, and just have conversation. Because once you start to get to know them and they start to get to know you, you start to pick up on different things. And so I think how I stay abreast is just, as much as I can, having real conversations and just being present actively in the lives of our campers. And so what we try to do is, outside of camp, is connect all of our ministries to that larger metropolis youth community. And so the events that we do, we structure them in such a way that we actually get to journey with kids throughout the course of a year. And so it's not just one event here and one event here, one event here, but we have multiple touch points throughout the year. And so when you're able to see them often, they're able to share things with you, you're able to share with them, and you're able to joke around, goof around, and you learn about different things that are going on in their world. And you really learn a lot about youth culture. And it's so important for us, I think, to study that, to understand what's going on in their world, that we can appropriately be present and active in it.
I like that you talk about connecting the ministries throughout the year and keeping them going. That's something that Perry and I have spoken about with the St. Sophia camp as well, and growing with the kids and meeting them where they're at. Panos, what's your number one challenge as a youth director? You personally, what's your number one challenge?
That's great, because I don't know which one's number one and which one's number two. I think a quick answer is to say COVID has changed the game. So that's certainly one. But I think another one is learning about my own leadership style. I'm a great doer. If you say, Pano, we need this done, I can make anything happen. I can get it done. I can do it. One of the challenges that I'm facing is having to identify, develop, and manage a team of people to do this metropolis wide, because I'm just one person. So sometimes just being open and vulnerable, I fall into a rut of I have to do instead of gathering people and training them and working, forming a team and working in that collaborative setting is something that I'm slowly working on. And again, I'll point back to COVID has made that tough. In my first year of ministry, we weren't able to do in-person things. So it was tough to really see the willing and eager people at all the parishes. But now that we've been able to travel the last, 6 months or so, that things have been a little bit better. It's been great to start identifying those folks and to really start meeting with them and working hand in hand with them. So
you inherited a ministry that was in the midst of COVID. Like, you inherited a shutdown ministry, and you had to start from there, right? And
Yep.
a lot of other youth ministers, or a lot of other ministers that took on COVID, found themselves having to transition into like shutdown ministries. How have you been able to exercise the freedom of getting out and doing that? Like, what are you seeing differently when you get to parishes and do things? I can tell you that in the last month, I was in Phoenix, and now I'm in Seattle, and life is totally different in Phoenix as it is in Seattle. I mean, totally different. Like the bans, the vaccination cards you have to show, just different things are just different in different parts of the West Coast here. We're talking about two totally different states, right? But and I know that your metropolis is really kind of concentrated. But how are you finding people now coming out of COVID? How are you finding them with their faith? How are you finding them with the ministries, with the programs that they're encountering?
Well, we're definitely seeing a little bit of that here too when you cross state lines. Massachusetts is very different than New Hampshire. It's very different than Rhode Island. It's very different than Maine. And so whenever we go somewhere, it's really important, I think, on my end to get an update or I guess a little insight from the clergy and the local team as to what have they been doing. Because when we go somewhere, we don't want to just make the parish feel uncomfortable and make the folks that are used to going to that parish feel uncomfortable. So it's sort of meeting people where they're at as far as their comfortability with COVID, and obviously following by the local and state guidelines. I've definitely seen that that's impacted the faith of our youth, though, because when you have churches shut down for a while, and when you have parents scared for their own safety, for the safety of their children, for the safety of any elderly they watch at home, and rightly so, not going to church or to gatherings. It's almost like the world has gone on, but we've taken a back step or a pause in the faith formation of our kids. And so in restarting now, it's a matter of, okay, where were they at? What has happened now in this year? How has their faith evolved over this past year in light of COVID? And how do we need to journey with them now through this? We've definitely seen a rise in mental health concerns in our youth. We've definitely seen isolation, loneliness, depression, anxiety on the rise. And so recognizing that, we need to be a little bit more attuned to what the warning signs are of all those things going on, because those things will intimately impact a person's faith journey. But the beauty is the faith offers some solace and some consolation in light of those challenges. And so whereas maybe in the past we've been very focused on dogmatic teaching and or expecting our children to know X, Y, and Z from these lessons, we have a beautiful relational opportunity to meet them where they're at in their struggle, to form a beautiful relation with them and journey with them towards this peace that Christ offers us. And so I think that COVID has sort of changed the game for us and has forced us to rethink what we focus on and how we do it.
So I love that you said that, Panos, because when I was in Oakland as the assistant to Father Tom Paris of blessed memory now, he would encourage me to do all kinds of things with the youth. You know, he would say, you know, take them to an A's game, take them to a Giants game, take them, you know, to a water park. And I would say, well, how am I supposed to, you know, have a Bible study at an A's game? Or how am I supposed to do catechism at a water park? And he would say, that's not youth ministry. Youth ministry is about relationships, right? And that's where I really kind of started honing in on that part of it. And you've mentioned it as well, that it's relational, right? What are some of the struggles that our kids are facing now outside of COVID and outside of the mental health issues that COVID brings? What are you seeing that our kids are having a really hard time with?
You said outside of COVID and
outside of COVID, like we know that COVID is an issue, and we know that the COVID leads to anxiety and depression. Outside of those two things, what is something else that you're noticing that our kids are struggling with?
Well, I think there are a lot of expectations, implicit and explicit, of kids nowadays. I mean, kids, we talk about kids, you know, growing up too fast, and you know, younger kids are a lot older than they were in the past and things like that. But those sort of anecdotes are really true. And so with the rise of social media, we're seeing younger kids trying to act older a lot sooner, but also studies are showing that physiologically it's a change that's happening. I mean, young people are entering this new phase of life a lot quicker. But also one of the challenging things there as well is that the signs of adulthood are being reached a lot later. So this period of adolescence is really being extended. And really this period has almost doubled, maybe not quite doubled, but it's definitely greater than it was. And so this transitory period in a person's life of puberty and young adulthood, which is a rocky time for a lot of people until they're able to feel settled, it's really lasting a lot longer than it has in the past. And so those pressures are just exacerbated and continuing on. So there's a lot of insecurity that people feel socially, relationally, financially, on top of, like we said, all this other stuff that COVID has brought along.
Panos, I love that, because that's a huge issue, and I'm glad you hit on that, because our kids are getting older, younger, and staying younger longer, right? And so it's a very good point. When you encounter that as, you know, a youth minister, how do you encourage the youth to take on the faith and exercise ways in which they can develop their faith to find peace, right? Because you can tell a kid, you know, put your phone down, turn off the internet, and just sit in silence for a few minutes. But then after a few minutes, they're bored and they're right back on their phone, right? and you can explain to them what it's like to be in a quiet church and to be in prayer. But a lot of times we don't teach them how to get there and how to do that, right? So how are you educating our kids? How are you getting our kids to learn the things that you've learned and you've developed in your life to get to where you're at?
I think I try to reflect on the meaningful experiences that I've had, and see what was meaningful about it, how it was communicated, and how then we can share that with our kids. I think our kids nowadays, instead of they're not so receptive to being told what to do, but rather they need learning experiences crafted and constructed that will help them come to an understanding on their own, right? So we can talk to a kid about peace, we can talk to a kid about silence, we can talk to them about that, but unless we sit there with them and help them understand that on their own, it will be something that falls on deaf ears. At our camp and at many others, we have something called Alone with God, or after our morning Orthodox service, we sit in silence. The whole camp is silent for 10 minutes. And we talk to them what to do, how to do it. We talk to them about scripture reading, we talk to them about prayer, and we guide them through it. And then we send them off to do it. And then later on in the day, we have points where we can touch base about how it went, and people ask questions, and they'll grab the counselors and they'll grab the priests and they'll ask, can I do this? Can I do that? Whatever. And it's really beautiful. One of the things that I really like doing as well is when we talk about these things, like I said, to craft a learning experience. We've done lessons with bullying and body image, which are two big things going on nowadays, where we actually incorporate the use of icons, and we get really creative with pictures of regular people, then pictures of icons, and really try to shape an experience that will stick with them.
Very cool. Very cool. I love that. And I'm going to take that offline with you and ask you to share some of those resources with us, because I don't think that we as ministers and in our vocation share enough information. I think that a lot of times we're recreating the wheel. So it's great if we can find a spot where we can share that stuff and get it out there. Noel, we're at the point in the show where I'd like to offer the opportunity for others to ask questions if there's any questions out there. I still have lots of questions for Panos, but let's see what other people would like to ask.
Sure. So one question is, COVID has obviously been a challenge. It's been a hardship, but is there anything that you've learned? A lot of people, OCN included, have adapted, have created new resources that are COVID appropriate, virtual resources. Of course, as you described, nothing can replace the in-person experience, but is there anything that's been discovered maybe about a gap in resources that's been filled thanks to COVID? You know, maybe ways of reaching out virtually that can be used effectively to fill in gaps moving forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that when we first went into COVID, we all shifted to this virtual world, and we shifted to Zoom, and we shifted to online church and things like that. And so there are places where I think a lot of this stuff can be useful. For example, this right now, I don't know if as many gatherings like this were happening electronically before COVID. And the reality is these Zoom gatherings can be great because you can get a group of people together to talk about a certain topic, to have a discussion, and you don't have to drive, et cetera, et cetera. It's archived, it's saved, it's shared, can be accessed later. One of the things that we spoke about a little bit earlier is just the prevalence of social media and how important that is. And that wasn't really a space before COVID that I think the church did a great job engaging and interacting with. And so moving forward, that's something that will be incredibly important. I just think a lot about how we need people that can create good content, people that can create good graphics, as an effective means of reaching people, because we as people now are so connected to our devices that really it's a constant battle for screen time. And so we need to keep pushing things out there, pushing as much content as we can out there. Because if we're not doing it, the screen time and brain time will be filled with anything else. So I think that's one of the nice things that COVID's done. It's really forced us to shift into the digital age a little bit more so.
I think you're 100% right on that, Panos, in that I was amazed at how many parishes were not broadcasting their services on Sundays, and COVID really forced them to have to do something. And then how easy it was for them to get those up and going on the internet, and how many clergy are like, well, I didn't know it was that easy to broadcast my service, right? Some of them doing it just with their iPhones on Facebook Live. So yeah, very, very good. Noel, anything else?
Yeah, so you touched on this a little bit already, actually, but a lot of people complain about a lack of youth education at the parish level. And we know that camps and other activities can fill some of those gaps, but is there anything specific, maybe specific advice or specific guidance that you would give what priests or parents at the parish level can do to step that up?
Yeah, so I say everything that I'll preface rather everything that I've already said, and what I will say with that, being a young guy, I certainly don't have all the answers or pretend to have all the answers. Just I'm sharing a few thoughts, whereas most of the people that are involved in ministry have probably been involved in ministry a lot longer than I've been alive. And that's a really beautiful thing, because I think what we need to do a better job of, to answer the question, is to tap into those resources. I think one thing that COVID's done is really forced us to isolate ourselves, and a lot of times we're acting in silos, and we're not talking to the parishes that are close to us. We're not talking to other youth ministers that we know at other parishes across the country, like Father Gary mentioned to. And so a lot of times we're trying to reinvent the wheel. And so I think that if we can sort of, as youth workers at parishes, or even clergy, can form frequent methods or frequent touch points with others that are doing ministry, to share ideas and to brainstorm, I think that goes a long way, because one, it encourages us to actually do something, and then it helps refine that which we want to do. So I think really communicating and gathering experienced and excited, maybe inexperienced, but excited youth workers, to just have conversations and to just start doing something. We oftentimes get paralyzed in our analysis, paralysis by analysis, right? And we're hesitant to actually do things. And sometimes it's just a matter of, let's just try it. Let's just do it. Let's just give it a shot and go. When I was at Northeastern, to just share a little story, I got a call one morning from Father Ted Barbas, and he said, Bono, he goes, congratulations. I said, for what? He goes, well, let me ask you, are you Orthodox? I said, yes. He goes, are you a student at Northeastern? I said, yes. He goes, congratulations, you're the new president of the OCF. I said, I didn't know we have an OCF. He goes, you don't. It's fizzled out, and you're going to work with Father Dimitri Tonius at the cathedral to get it up and going. So Father Dimitri and I, we said, all right, let's give it a shot. Let's try it. And so we went from meeting once a month with 3 or 4 kids, and sometimes no kids, to now, several years later, maybe 8 or 9 years later, this ministry meets once a week with 20 to 25 kids. So I think that it's a matter of reaching out to people that are excited and experienced, actually trying to do something, and staying optimistic and motivated to keep it going, even though it might seem tough at the outset.
Father Ted is great at that, Panos, and I love the point that you brought up there, because I bet you that Father Ted made that phone call to you, and then that was it, right? Like he kind of put you on the boat and pushed you off into the sea and said, learn how to fish, right? Like he was like, here's a pole, here's the bait, go figure it out, right? Like, and that's what ministry is about, right? And look what's been created because of that. And the other thing I was going to say is, don't let anybody despise your youth, man. You were probably 3 or 4 years old when I was at seminary back in 1997. And so to know that our youth are growing up like young men like you is really inspiring to me. So I'm thrilled that you're doing what you're doing. And your answers are, and what the information that you're sharing is totally fantastic and very inspiring to me. And I'm loving it. So Noel, these questions are great, much better than I can offer. Anything else that anybody wants to know?
Well, I'll just point out Maria's comment in the chat. She's offering some candidates for Miss Pano.
This is not going to become the dating the dating show. But Panos, we're Greek, and that's what we do, right? That's part of what we want. We want people to be happy together. But I'm sorry that I did that to you. I apologize. But listen, Panos, I want to know something. Growing up in the summer camp programs, growing up as an altar boy, growing up as a chanter, going through the seminary, you've had lots of experiences with a lot of different people, right? From being a leader to being a follower to training people to being trained. Is there one story in your mind that sticks out that you think back to and think that was a pivotal moment in my life, and because that happened, I'm able to be more clear on the way that I do X, Y, Z? And I'm kind of leading to a story that you told me when we were in New York together about Father Ted Barbas and seeing you. But not just that story, but are there any other moments in your life where you think, God, I want to emulate that? Like that was cool. That's a cool youth ministry kind of tactic that I want to kind of hang on to.
Yeah. I think I'll start easy where your suggestion here. And I just remember despite having gone through all of these programs, despite having been an active participant since I was 8 years old, my freshman year of college was a little tough. My yaya had gotten sick just recently prior, and there were a few other things going on in my life where things were a little rough for me. And so that summer at camp where I went to service staff, I'd said something to one of my friends. I'd said, yeah, this year's been a little tough, man, whatever. Later on that day, Father Ted pulled me aside to the little side door of the chapel and says, I just want to let you know, man, I heard what you said earlier. And if you want to chat, I'm here for you. And so I took him up on that offer, and we had a great conversation and went and followed up and followed up and followed up. And so one of the beautiful lessons from that story is paying attention to the things that our kids are saying, listening to what words come out of their mouth, and understanding that behind every single thing that is said is something else going on inside. So the jokes that we make, the things that we say, the way we act, the way we speak, the way we smile or not, really says what's going on under the surface. And I think once we learn to tune into that, once we learn to understand what cues to look for, we can really understand who needs to have a joy celebrated, or who needs some support in something challenging going on in their life.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Hey, we have a young person here. I've never done this before, Noel. Forgive me for doing this, but I'm going to go off a little bit. Alex, I see that you're on and you've got your camera on, and you're paying close attention. Do you know Panos from anywhere? Or are you just a fan of Father Gary's and you're following me around on OCN?
No, I do know Pano. I've known him for a few years now. I know him back from St. Nectarios in Roslindale.
Okay.
And I also know him from camp. So I kind of decided last minute I wanted to go on this and listen to his zealous words, if you will.
So let me ask you, how old are you, Alex? We're kind of going off script a little bit, Panos, forgive me, but I love this opportunity to talk to Alex. Alex, you live in the Boston area, I'm taking it?
Yes. I will be 17 in less than 3 weeks.
All right. Happy birthday, man. Happy
Thank
birthday.
you.
So you must be a junior in high school?
Yes.
All right. And then you know Panos from the church in Roslindale, and then from MBC.
Yeah.
What is it about Panos that inspires you?
One of the things that really interests me about him is that he's always enthusiastic about what he's preaching, what he's talking about, and he's always opening to just engaging in conversation. He's just such a warm and welcoming person, and I really inspired to be that someday, and I just really like looking at him in that regard. He's just like a really good person. I have no complaints about him. He's just a great guy.
That's awesome.
Personally
No,
and
go.
religiously too.
Very good. I love that, Alex. And Panos, I did that because I wanted to point out that this is third generation now, right? You said that there were people in your life that inspires you, and now you're inspiring another generation of people. And God bless Alex, whatever he does in his life. Hopefully he'll inspire somebody to do good things as well, regardless of what vocation he chooses in his life. This is what ministry is. This is how the church grows, right? This is church growth. This is no strategic plan done here at all with this right now. It's got to be something, Panos, that you think of? And if you were to have a conversation with Alex right now and nobody else was listening, right? Like it was just you and Alex, what would be a question or two that you would ask him to see how he's doing, right? Instead of saying, "Hey, Alex, how you doing?" What are some ways of conversations that you're starting a conversation with a 17-year-old kid who's in his junior year of high school? Like, take a guess or two at what Alex might be watching on Netflix, if he's even watching Netflix, because Netflix is dated for an old guy like me. But Panos, is he watching stuff on YouTube? Like, show us, Panos, like demonstrate a little bit here. Show us Panos Coufos in action. I know I'm putting you way out there, but go for it. Show it.
Well, number one, I'd be curious to follow up on whatever happened with the National Honor Society, because that was the conversation we were having. He was applying to National Honor Society, so I'm curious to know how things went with that.
I went in. I've been meaning to write back to you.
Hey,
Thank you very much for doing that.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Exciting
We
stuff.
took care of a little bit of business there. That's good. Got that out of the way.
But no, it's also like one of the nice things about Alex is I get to see him around, right? So like Alex and I, we follow each other on Instagram. So I get to see what he's up to, and I get to see how things are going at his high school and all that jazz. And you asked like what he'd be watching on Netflix and whatever. I mean, Squid Games was a big one that a lot of people were just into a bit ago. Alex, were we watching that?
I was not, but I heard that it's a show that a lot of people are into, so I might check it out.
My 13-year-old daughter got me through about 15 minutes of it, and I just couldn't take it. I was like, I can't imagine where this is going to go right now. So, yeah, very cool. I love that. So Panos, that's the whole point here of youth ministry, right? Like, I keep bringing him up, but Perry Skaggs has been a faithful listener to the show, and he was a guest for the past couple weeks. But my relationship with Perry didn't start off as a friendship. He was my camp counselor, and then my Goya basketball coach. And then as I grew and as we grew in ministry together, we became really good friends, right? So there he turned his screen on and he's poking his head out, but he's got his camp shirt on too. But that's the thing about youth ministry, right? Like we inspire each other and we move forward and we get things going. What would you want? What would you want to see Alex do in 5 to 7 years from now to prove that your ministry and your influence on his life was positive? Like, what are you hoping that Alex is a junior in high school? So 5 to 7 years from now, he's going to graduate college. What do you want? Where do you see Alex in 5 to 7 years as the director of youth and young adult ministries for your metropolis? What is a win-win for you in that situation?
I think when we look at all the kids we serve, like Alex here, and the hundreds that pass through our camp and the hundreds that are involved in our youth programs throughout our churches, I think when we talk about what is a win, I think it's the way that these young people live their lives, the decisions they make, not just now in high school, not just the decisions they make in college, but how they live their daily life, how they interact with people, and how they make their decisions, the big decisions and the small decisions. Every single day, we're faced with thousands of decisions, and small decisions and big decisions. The way we make them can impact our lives dramatically and impact the lives of those around us dramatically. Whether or not we're going to say, a simple hello to somebody that we don't know, or deciding on in college what our Saturday night is going to look like. Deciding on where we apply to school, deciding on if to apply to school, and deciding on where to apply for jobs. I think none of that really matters as far as where you go, what you do, but rather how you live your life. And so the win for me is if in 5 to 7 years, Alex can stand before a mirror and before an icon of Christ, and feel comfortable with the person that he is and the decisions that he makes and the way he treats people.
That's a wonderful response, man. I love that. I really, really love that. Noel, any other questions? Because I'm going to give Panos the last few minutes just to talk about what some of the issues that he sees with youth ministry and some of the things that he'd like to see happen. He's on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. And if we were to throw our resources together, we could do some real cool cross-country stuff. So if there's no other questions, I'm going to ask Panos. Panos, what is heavy on your heart? Like, what is it that you want just to tell the people?
Sure. Were there any other questions? Or jump right into it? Awesome. One of the things that I always try to drive home in camp or in youth programs that I'm running, if I'm running sessions or whatnot, it's that we have such a beautiful, beautiful story and such a beautiful message. And we, as Orthodox Christians, have a different lens through which we see the world. And it's important that we put on that lens, because when we live lives of respect, of honesty, of openness, of trust, of forgiveness, and of love, which are the pillars of our camp, we see that our life and the lives of those around us become so, so beautiful. And so there's a lot of craziness in our schools. There's a lot of craziness in our societies, a lot of craziness in our neighborhoods. And it's really tough to find a solid footing. But when we find our footing in the basic truths of the gospel, we're able to find this deep and great meaning and security in our lives, no matter what happens, no matter how messy things seem, and no matter where we find ourselves. And so I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but that's sort of what I hope to share, because once we understand that, then slowly the rest of the things in our life start to fall into place. And rather, we start to understand how to navigate the rest of the things that happen in our lives.
That's awesome. Panos, listen, Perry Skaggs, when he was coaching us in Goya basketball, would put on the theme to Rocky, and he would motivate us just with that theme to Rocky. Your words were that Stan Conti's orchestration right there. Those were very motivating words, and I loved hearing that. And I hope that God blesses your work and extends your ministry to other generations, so that we get more young Panoss Coufoses like you serving the church, not only just as youth ministers, but just in life. Make it very clear that you don't need to be, a graduate of the seminary to change somebody's life. You could have continued down that road of engineering and done some good things as well. You answered a calling. There's lots of ways to serve the church, and I'm just thrilled, Panos, that we were connected and we met and we had our conversations, and that it led to at the very least this conversation here. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to get some work done together in the future as well. So Noel, I got to tell you, I'm ready to rock and roll. I'm in Seattle. We're taking a group of young adults to the site in which St. John Maximovich reposed in 1966. We've got 3 different parishes coming together of young adults. We've got Greeks, we've got Russians, we've got Serbians all coming together to go visit and have dinner together afterwards. And Panos, you got me really excited about this. I mean, you got me pumped up. It's like listening to Rocky before a workout. So thank you. Noel, I'll let you close it out. And Panos, I'm going to do something that I haven't done before, but I'm going to ask you to give the closing prayer as we leave. So as soon as Noel's done, I'm going to ask you to pray for us.
All right. Well, not too many announcements today. Thank you again, Father Gary, and thank you, Pano, for today. As I said, we will have the recorded video available on our website, myocn.net, after the program. And of course, the recorded video will also be on our Facebook and YouTube, so you can share it with anyone who missed it today. Upcoming programs this Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have our 3rd program with Dr. Al Rossi about becoming a healing presence. He's the author of the book by the same name, talking about how we can transform our own lives through Christ in order to become a healing presence to those around us. So that'll be a great conversation. 7 p.m. You can get the link on our website, as always. And then this Friday, we have the 2nd program in our series with Paula Marchman, who is a licensed professional counselor, talking about marriage and strengthening a marriage in the context of children, whether you're a new parent, soon to be parent, anything like that. So due to the sensitive nature of that conversation, we do talk about people's personal marriage problems and questions. We don't broadcast that program live, but if you'd like to join the class, you can still register up until this Friday. That is also at myocn.net under marriage enrichment for new parents. You don't have to be a new parent. That's just sort of the direction of the content, but I think it's useful for anyone who's looking forward to parenthood or anyone who's already a parent. And if you join the Zoom, you'll be able to participate in the Q&A. But if not, we will have just the general content, which is a small part of the class, available as a recording on our YouTube channel. So sign up for that if you're interested, if you want to ask questions or just hear the full discussion. That's on our website. And Father Gary, what are we doing next week on Armed with Faith?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to tease that. I'm going to try something really, really different next week, Noel. So I'm going to ask everybody to be patient with me and pray that I'm able to pull it off and see if it works, because we're going to try to take the show in a little bit of a different direction with the conversation. And Panos was that bridge to that. And Alex, I want to thank you, because if I can give anybody like a little bit of a sneak peek or a hint, the conversation I had with you and Panos is kind of the direction we want to go with this program. So we're hoping to do that. So Panos, I might bring you and Alex back for a conversation next week. We'll talk. But that's what we want to do. We want to hear from you, Alex. We want to hear from you young people about what you want from the church and what you want from us to do for you so that you can grow, because it's enough of us putting broccoli and asparagus in front of you and telling you it's good for you. We know it's good for you, but tell us how to make it taste good, man. Tell us how to make you eat it. You know what I mean? Because like Panos said, the message is a great message. It's one that is going to change your life and it's going to make it better. But how do we make it enticing for you to want to do, right? How do we want you to live it and do that? We all know that we can eat vegetables and broccoli and cauliflower and all that, and we're going to be healthy. But, you know, we start to think and scratch our heads thinking, you know, is it really going to eat that the rest of my life? But when you realize the benefits of it, your life is going to grow and your health is going to take off and your spirit is going to soar. So that's where we're going, Noel. Pray that we can make it happen. And Panos, thank you very much for a great week, a great program. You got applause from Perry Skaggs, and lots of messages popping up on my screen from people. Father Sotiri Rusakis, another really good friend who's a loyal listener, gave you some really cool compliments as well, and he's a seasoned priest also. So words coming from him are great. So thank you very much to all of you. Panos, if you would close us with a prayer and take us out, would appreciate it. And love to everybody. Thank you all for being here and listening and being part of this.
Father Gary, thank you so much to you for having me on here tonight. Noel, thanks to you for all your help. It was really a great blessing to be able to be here and to share a little bit about the ministry, which we're also passionate about. So thank you so much for that. I do just want to share that if folks are interested in continuing the conversation around youth ministry, you can find me, Panoss Coufos, either on Facebook or Instagram, but my email address as well is pcoufos, first initial, last name, pcoufos@boston.goarch.org. And I'd be happy to chat with any of you, again, to continue the conversation. So thank you so much, Father Gary, for having me on, and for everyone for listening. In the name of the Father.
Coufos is with a C, right?
Coufos is with a C.
F-O-S, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Christ, the true light that enlightens every person who comes into the world, we ask you to shine in our hearts and shine in the dark places of our souls. Please allow us to become intimately familiar with your love, your peace, and all the blessings which you promise to those who follow you. Please guide us all in your work. Please guide us all in loving you and loving our neighbor. We thank you for this time that we've spent together, and we ask you to continue to bless those of us who are on this call, those of us listening, and those engaged in youth work, that we may effectively and properly teach the gospel message to our young people. Please allow us to be faithful in this task that you have entrusted to us, and please guide us in this work. Through the prayers of the Panagia and of all the saints, we ask you to have mercy on us. Amen.
Man, Panos, thank you very much, man. You killed it, and I love it, and I wish I had one more sister. But you'll find Mrs. Panoss Coufos real soon. God bless.
Not worried about it.
Have a great. I don't. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be worried about it.
Come to type, and I'll introduce you to the 27 beautiful girls that I know. God be with you. God bless you and strengthen you.
Awesome. Thank you, Panos. You're a good sport, man. Thanks. Take care. Have a great week.